Hi, it's Julia. Can you hear me?
Hey, Councilman, here it's Candace. Can you hear me?
Hey, Candace.
Hi.
Oh my God, it's so good to hear you. I only see you on Facebook,
I know. How are you doing?
I'm good, dodging bullets everywhere.
Yeah. How's Annalise doing?
She's good. She's in the car with me right now. Well, I'm driving, but so I'm doing it. I'm calling in, so I don't need to be seen, right?
No. You're fine. We can hear you
And
fine.
are there other people here with you?
Councilor Flaherty just.
Flaherty's on. Flaherty's on me here. Watch it. I'm watching.
Hi, Councilor.
No, I just want to make sure that I'm like, don't start babbling because I be, I start, blah, blah, blah. But I do have a question about this before are we recording?
We're not recording right now, but we may be live, but it's not recorded yet.
Okay. So I've never done this before. I just need to know what's expected of me, Flaherty. What am I doing? What's this about?
You vote the way that I vote and you'll be fine and you'll have a great career. How's that sound?
I know, but what am I voting on, Flaherty? Don't put me in trouble.
Today it's a hearing. It's Councilor Wu is chairing and sponsored a hearing on the Zoning Board of Appeals. There are currently appointments. There's 3, I think, new appointments and 1 reappointment that are being held in her committee. I think she's looking for some answers for some questions that she had that I don't think she got fully answered. So I think that's what part of it. But what's happening now is that the Zoning Board of Appeals, we don't have a quorum. So things are starting to back up at the Zoning Board of Appeals. Small things from small additions to your home and increasing living spaces to bigger, more important projects so that we should be focusing on. So hopefully we should get some questions answered tonight and it'll issue a committee report and put it in front of the council next Wednesday for a vote would be, I guess, optimistic. Other than that, that's what it is. It's just to get some questions from a previous hearing.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well then, but I thought from according to my emails, like some appointments of 2 people, right? The 2 people that are being appointed. That's what we're asking about. Okay.
Well, the subject of the meeting is to discuss the appointments. So yep. I want to say that there's a total of 4 appointments. There's 3 new appointments because there's been vacancies on the board, and there's 1 reappointment. But Councilor Wu, when she comes on, she can probably explain in detail. I don't have the appointments in front of me. I'm having my staff email them to me as we speak. So, but I think it's just in general to talk about the appointments and sort of next steps, and hopes that you get the answers from last time.
Right,
in a nutshell.
I'll follow your lead, okay? Thank you for that. Thank you.
No problem. It's Flynn's birthday. He probably thinks he's got all the answers tonight, so you might want to follow him tonight.
Is he on? He's such a hard worker. He's been showing up to everything. Have we sang happy birthday to him?
I don't think so. Flynn would go to an envelope opening.
That's a good one. I haven't heard that before, and I could see him on the invitation for that one.
I resemble that remark, Flaherty.
He is here.
He's here.
Julie, he didn't even take the day off for his birthday. Imagine that.
Yeah, he's making us look bad.
That's right.
Yep.
I can't believe I turned 40.
You're older than me, Flynn. Who's kidding who?
Just 2 months though. That's it.
Happy birthday, Flynn, again.
Thank you.
You couldn't go out with your little mask on somewhere? You got to show up to all these hearings?
I'm trying to get into the hearing. The video's not working. I don't know if Flaherty's not letting me in.
Hey, Councilor Flynn, happy birthday. It's Candace.
Hey, Candace, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks.
The video's not showing right now because we have the slide up just for recording and starting purposes. But once the meeting gets started, you'll be able to see everyone.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Candace. And
you're welcome.
And central staff for all you're doing. I thought Flaherty was trying to play a trick on me, you know?
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's not about you, Flynn, today. Sorry. Not your birthday.
Thanks for the work you're doing, Candace. You guys are doing a great job, you and Kerry and the team and your lady and
Oh,
everybody.
thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate all that you're doing for us and for the city.
Can you just tell Councilor Wu that I'll go last? I'm driving, so I don't want to. I'm going to be listening most of the time, so I'm going to go on mute, okay? But I am here.
Will do. I'll let her know.
Thank you.
Hi, I heard, sorry, I was just stuck in the waiting room for a little bit. I heard you, Julia.
No problem.
I'm here, but I'm on mute and I'll go last.
Okay, that sounds good.
Hey, Councilor Wu, do you have an idea of what time you want to get started?
I'm ready anytime. I was just gonna give another minute in case any other colleagues came, but I'm not waiting for anyone in particular from in terms of panelists or anything.
Okay.
Candace, if you could just like, I don't know if it was Frank before Mike. I mean, I assume Eddie was first because he always is, but what the order was after that.
The order, yeah, I can let you know.
Hey,
the order.
not so fast, Madam Chair, not so fast. Flynn was a little slow on his birthday.
He's got, yeah, he deserves a break on today. Happy birthday.
Thank you, Michelle.
And be here too. Okay, yeah, Candace, that would be great if you let me know the order. And
So
then-
we had Councilor Mejia, but she said she will go last because she's driving right now.
Mhm.
Councilor Flaherty.
I'll let Flynn go in front of me because it's his birthday.
Thank
Then
you.
Councilor Flynn. And then you came in and now I see Councilor Bach has just entered.
But it was Councilor
Councilor Baker came in right after you, so he was right before Councilor Bach.
okay. So Baker, Bach, then Mejia. All right.
And I'm gonna start the recording now, just so everyone knows. We weren't recording before, so the conversation before wasn't recorded, but just so you're aware, anything said now is going to be recorded to the cloud.
Okay, great. And I'm ready to go anytime. Okay, so I think we're recording now. Candace, I'm just getting a message that says video can't be started. I know, no one needs to see all of our Zoom faces again if they don't want to, but I don't know if we want folks to enable their videos just to have more than the audio.
Okay, I'm just going to change the settings around a little bit.
Okay, thanks. And then we can get started right after that. Okay, great. Looks like we are good to go and videos can be turned on if folks would like. I want to thank everyone for joining us, especially our birthday boy today, who's been given special privileges to jump the line to be first in the order because of that. So thank you to Councilors Ed Flynn, Michael Flaherty, Frank Baker, Kenzie Bach, and Julia Mejia so far. This is not actually a hearing or a working session. It is a meeting of the City Council's Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. And it was called to discuss the, oops, I see more councilors in the waiting room. Okay, hold on, let me see if I can add Councilors Wasabi George and Edwards. Okay. So, okay, Lydia Edwards, Anissa Wasabi George. Let me see if there's anyone else in the waiting room that we missed. Okay, that's all I'm seeing for now. So I was just saying this is a committee meeting rather than a hearing or working session because we are, I'm hoping to address the issues the issue overall of the Zoning Board of Appeals and the nominees before the council rather than specific dockets. So today I've called this meeting to address the pending vacancies in the ZBA. As you know, the City Council has authority to exercise oversight over this board with our confirmation power. We've been given that power over of oversight through state law. And this is not our standard process. Usually we would be inviting nominees in one by one and having a discussion about their qualifications or their motivations for serving on the board. But I just want to emphasize that these are not standard appointments. These appointments include the seats that were vacated from resignation in the wake of a federal corruption investigation with underlying questions. And many of us have continued to hear from our constituents that the development process, and specifically the ZBA's role within that process, isn't working for neighborhoods and residents. It's not about the individual ZBA members who work extremely hard and are volunteers. It is about the structure of the board. And because of that, the council at our last meeting passed a home rule petition that Councillor Edwards had introduced that requires structural change through the ZBA. So, you know, we all voted on it, but the home rule petition requires more transparency and some process changes, but it also works to correct a mismatch between the expertise represented on the board and the expertise that communities need for neighborhoods to feel like the development is serving their needs. Residents have been raising these issues throughout the development boom, and we have, it kind of came to a head last year when there was the guilty plea from a former city employee around taking a bribe to influence the ZBA decision. So in the months then, I just want to emphasize that we have not moved these appointments while waiting for the cloud over the ZBA's integrity to be lifted. Questions about what happened, who was involved, how we could guarantee residents can trust the city agency and city government, waiting for the investigations to be completed, waiting to see the reports, and then receiving a few pages that did not provide the answers. And I've forwarded questions I've asked and responses received to all the counselors as well. So I wanted to ask everyone here to discuss evaluating these appointments differently than usual council business, because in my estimation, we can't go back to business as usual on the ZBA for many reasons just outlined. And I think we have the opportunity to reflect the spirit of that home rule petition that we just passed, to require that type of expertise that isn't currently represented, which we need to be injected into the development process, expertise around, one seat around climate change and environmental protection, one seat around urban planning that would be added to the board. So the last thing I'll say is that the city council's power is limited, but while we're waiting for the state to take up action on this home rule petition, I'm going to recommend that we take up these nominations differently than usual and take the opportunity to ask for expertise that matches the legislation we just voted on, which I forwarded all the resumes of the sitting board members as well as the nominees, and we can go through that in more detail if you like, but that type of expertise, those two categories in particular that are about ensuring the future of our city, the development that we're putting into all of our neighborhoods matches the needs that we'll see from a climate perspective, from an urban planning perspective, that is not currently represented on the board or in the nominees that are before us. Okay, so that's what I wanted to get on the table, just from my perspective of why we're here and why we're doing it a little bit differently than usual. So, I think maybe with Zoom, it makes sense for, I don't think because it's a committee meeting that we need to go through one by one and make sure everyone says something. So if folks want to, okay, I see some hands raised. Actually, why don't we just go through one time through in the order so everyone has a chance to say what they'd like to say, and then we'll go back and if folks have comments, raise your hand. Okay, so starting with Councillor Flynn, it will be Flynn, Flaherty, Baker, Bach, Mejia, Edwards, Asabi George.
Thank you, Councilor Wu, and to my colleagues for convening this committee meeting. The ZBA plays, as we all know, plays a critical role in the development process in our city. And what I would like to discuss, or to have a ZBA member have a good background and experience, real life experience about how government works, but also someone that understands the critical role of a neighborhood and a function of a neighborhood where families can live and raise kids and go to parks. But a ZBA member has the influence and power as it decides which projects are effective and not. But it can help to build a neighborhood. It can help build a strong community. It can encourage people through their smart development of staying in communities, of raising families, and setting an agenda that a city works for everybody, especially for families, young families that are just starting out. That we have great planners that are looking into, schools, that are looking into where parks should go, are looking into transportation issues. So they should have a vast knowledge of city government, but they should have a vast knowledge of real life experience of what it is about raising a young family and what a young family needs in a city. And an urban planner, a designer would know those issues, but also residents of Boston know the critical role of neighborhoods and how they can be helpful keeping families in our city. And unfortunately, at times, families move out of cities because of lack of services for whatever reason. So that's what I'm interested in hearing, and that's what I'm looking forward to some discussion on. Again, thank you, Councilor Wu.
Thank you. Happy birthday.
Thank you, Michelle.
Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the questions I had raised my hand was, because I don't have them in front of me, but the existing members, not the appointments that are in the committee, but the existing appointments. Do we know when the terms expire for those members? And I raise that only because it could take a year, 2, maybe longer to get our home rule passed. And the concerns, and again, identifying, obviously transparency is huge, and making sure that residents and both the petitioners and the abutters never feel that the cake is baked. And we clearly need to make sure, and we talked about this during Councilor Edwards' hearing, is that we want to make sure that the board members possess a skill set that makes sense for 2020. We don't want to have too many folks where we can't get to consensus. At the same time, we want to make sure that, you touched on them in your opening, that folks that have experience around the environment and housing and et such. So I was curious on that to see whether or not it makes sense to kind of whether continue to move this forward with the eye towards sort of obviously the home rule petition and making some of those changes that we need, but it may come in the form of as other memberships expire a little further down the road. And I only raise that because the calls I'm getting, folks, the J.J. Carroll Apartments in Brighton that we did a lot of work for, they had to defer at a recent meeting because there was no quorum. And that's a huge project in Councilor Braden's district that for senior housing. And now the residents are going to suffer because they're waiting for there to be a quorum and waiting for these things to get approved. And so again, recognizing the need for transparency, making sure that we're getting the proper skill set, but the lack of appointments are now starting to trickle out to the neighborhood where folks, and a lot of people are home due to COVID. So they're probably like myself, they're looking around the house and they're finding things that need to be fixed. And whether it's replacing a deck or adding a dormer or smaller fixes that do, believe it or not, require zoning board of appeal approval, they're kind of being held hostage to this issue. And that's my concern. I want to strike the balance. And I want to recognize that, we need to make an adjustment in terms of the skill set that we're going to be requiring from our zoning board of appeal members, as well as put in the necessary safeguards around conflict of interest and stuff like that. But at the same time, we need to kind of continue to move the city's business forward. And I think the latest statistic I had got was because of COVID, I think there's close to, I think it's like close to 700 cases are backlogged because of COVID. And so we have those that are sort of stuck in the quagmire. And every day, I just got off a BPDA hearing, as did a couple of our other colleagues on new matters. I think there's 20 something on the agenda today. So again, these appointments were made back in October. I think a couple were in October, a couple were in January. I think we at least need to kind of continue to move forward and to give the board, at least the membership of a quorum so that they can continue to do the people's business while we strike that balance and we iron out sort of the needs that we've identified through the home rule petition. And it may, I think the argument is today, it's that I think we're trying to get them out of this batch of appointments, but it may be something that we have to strike that balance and maybe do it over a period of time. And again, that's just my food for thought. And it's only because I'm now getting calls and concerns from residents, from taxpayers who are trying to do really small improvements on their homes throughout all of the neighborhoods. And they're hitting the wall because of the backlog. And I think we've got to recognize that, that there's a role to play and that there's business to be done. And at the same time, and we're trying to get some of these changes brought forward. And I'm not quite sure we're going to be able to do it all in this one full swoop of these 4 appointments. I think we got to give some thought to how do we kind of keep the trains running on time, at the same time focus on the changes that we needed, that we've identified in the home rule petition, and kind of move forward. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it, Madam Chair, and I'm open to other people's thoughts and opinions on it.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Yeah, just I forgot to mention in the beginning the backlog. So that's the reason why I wanted to call this meeting today, in the hopes that at our next council meeting next week, that I want to see action on this one way or the other. As committee chair, I'll put a recommendation before the council then, but we need to address this. And I think it's important to note, so just in case folks would find this background helpful, there are currently 4 active full board members, 2 active alternates, and 1 holdover alternate. So there are 7 people who are essentially serving on the board right now. 5 makes a quorum. The issue is that not everyone can make every meeting. People need to recuse themselves, etc. We have
right. And Madam Chair, just on the 4, Madam Chair, if I may just interject, on the 4 that are in front of us or in committee, which one of them are statutory seats, like like the architectural board or the real estate board? I don't have them in front of me, but which one of them are statutory? Because that's another factor here. Like until the statute gets changed, we're sort of we're hijacking those 4, trying to bring around change when statutorily those seats are kind of already secure until we get the home rule passed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so to answer that question, there are 2 full members nominated. Each are with a statutory background, one from Greater Boston Real Estate Board and the other from the BSA, the Boston Society of Architects. And then there's another new alternate nominated with that Boston Society of Architects track. And then there's just a reappointment of an alternate who is with the Building Trades Employers Association, but again it continues to serve in holdover status right now.
Got it. Thank you for clarification.
Thank you. Councilor Baker is next.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty, for your words there. I think they ring true, that we have to move some appointments along so we can get back to business. I'm hearing the same stories about people trying to get work done, and the normally arduous process is even longer. And the other day I had a project shot down. I thought it was a good project, had an amazing amount of abutter support, civic support, and one person that didn't take part in the whole process, which lasted about 2.5 years, wanted to make noise and run around the campfire and made calls, and ultimately ended up getting the project denied, which I was shocked. So I think we need to move these along. However we do that, I understand the politics behind it. There's people that are playing politics with it. That's fine. But I do think we need to get business moving forward. And I can't agree with Michael's words anymore. And I'll sit and listen. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councilor Baker. Councilor Bach. And as Councilor Bach is unmuting, my team just sent over the expiration dates for all the existing members. So I'll email that out to everyone right now too.
Yeah, and Candace, if you could let me, my video stopped, so I can't share video for some reason. So I'm not trying to hide from you all. Yeah, but I can go nonetheless. Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. I mean, I think my instinct here is that it does make sense when we've got 4 appointments before us, which is a pretty substantial portion of the board. And we've expressed as a body a desire to move that board's like knowledge and capacity in this direction of more expertise in environmental issues in urban planning. Like, it makes a lot of sense to me that we would use those vacancies to try to achieve some of that expertise in the interim. And I mean, I do think it's complicated somewhat by the fact that, to Councillor Flaherty's point, that these appointees have been offered by some of the appointing bodies, right? So the BSA, and then I think the other ones, the real estate board. Is that right, Madam Chair? The two who would become permanent members. One is GREB and the other one is BSA. But I guess my instinct on this is that if we could, you know, find a way to add, it just feels like the situation has changed since these appointments came in multiple respects, right? There's both the like federal inquiry and the whole set of things that the chair referenced. And then there's also the fact that we, the council, have taken a position in concert with the mayor about what the ZBA ought to look like. And since there is room for us to reflect that in these.
Uh-oh, Councilor Bach, your sound cut out. Councilor Bach? Okay, I think we might have.
That extremely
now you're back. I don't know if it was just me, but your sound cut out for maybe 15 seconds.
Okay. All right. I'll just say what was the change
things had changed in the meantime, including the council and the mayor.
Right. So they've changed in the meantime, both in terms of us taking action and in terms of what's happened vis-a-vis the ZBA. And I don't think it's crazy for us to go back to the appointing authorities and say, hey, as a policy matter, we're really committed to this type of expertise. Could you guys put forward appointees who would reflect that? We might have to think through what the mechanics of that are, Madam Chair. Like, do we ask one of those bodies to put forward somebody who reflects those, like, somebody who reflects one of those capacities and the other to put forward someone who reflects the other, right? Like, and I think there's also a question I would be open to for like BSA. I think they have both an alternate and a board member in the mix. And I would also be, open to one of those two appointees becoming somebody who's got this expertise. I mean, I think, we have to think about the process here. I also think that if we do make that request, the onus is on the council to Councillor Flaherty's and Baker's points to take up any, subsequently submitted appointment, like very expeditiously, right? To hold a hearing and vote on it like in rapid fire. And I do share the concern. I mean, JJ Carroll is a project that I worked on back when I was at the Housing Authority. And I think like it's obviously concerning when we aren't able to move business forward. Although to the chair's point, we haven't reached the point where it is like impossible for the business to move forward. It's a constellation of factors, right, that cause that particular one to happen. But there's a reason we have alternates and we want to have a fully appointed board. So yeah, so that would be my main comments, Madam Chair, is like I'm inclined to the idea that with this many vacancies before us and in light of the whole situation, it makes sense to ask the nominating authorities to renominate with those in mind, but with the view that we would want to do it really specifically, and then that the onus would be on the council to pursue it very expeditiously, subsequently. And I don't know whether, and then I'm ambivalent about perhaps we should just confirm the holdover person. Like, I don't know what the kind of, I find myself slightly unfamiliar with what the council's norms has been on passing ones that have been nominated before, but certainly if it's been our default to kind of judge that if somebody's, been a member in good standing, that we continue, that might make sense. But anyways, those are my 2 cents. Thank you, Madam Chair, for holding this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Bach. That's very helpful. I will add one point that you brought up in terms of what are the options for trying to get this expertise. So yes, there's those 2 seats that are connected with organizations, and each of those organizations usually can put forward, let me just double check the legislation, can put forward multiple nominees. So for example, the Greater Boston Real Estate Board nominates 4 people to the mayor, and the mayor picks one of them. And same thing with the Boston Society of Architects. They hand a list over of 4 people to the mayor, and the mayor picks one of them. So, there's some question about, was there someone else on that list that might have had this type of expertise? I will also note that there is another full position available for the mayor to nominate that doesn't come from any organization at all. So he has not nominated a second mayoral seat that of someone who's tied to a neighborhood association, who has served on a neighborhood association for a year. And that has not been submitted to no names have been submitted to the council for consideration there, as well as he could also, anytime nominate 3 additional alternate seats, his own at-large seat, which has no restrictions whatsoever, and then the 2 mayoral nominees that represent neighborhood associations as well. So there's technically a pool of 1 more full member and then 3 more alternates that are, totally, there's no one even suggested yet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's helpful to know. And I'll also add that the one other thing that's in the legislation that we might reflect on, I know it was brought up by Councillor Edwards, is the idea of having a renter in the mix. So that would be the other, besides the 2 areas of expertise, I think that would be the other thing that kind of would be consistent with the spirit of the legislation.
Okay, thank you. I know Councillor Mejia had asked to go last because I think she's traveling and not, as sitting in one place. So I'm going to assume that she meant, as the line kept getting longer too, but just throw a blue hand up, Councillor Mejia, if that's not true, because there are 2 other councillors, Councillor Edwards and then Councillor Asabi George. So I'm not seeing a blue hand. So we'll go to Councillor Edwards, Asabi George, and then Mejia.
Thank you. I echo a lot of what my colleagues have said. I have heard about the line. I've had some projects take a risk, if they will, that they felt was, an unnecessary risk, and then get shot down, with mitigation also being shot down with them. I do think that being able to view the current applicants that are proposed to us from the mayor, and I think it was really important, and I appreciate you explaining that, Councillor Wu, that there's a pool that he chose to pick from, and so that's who's pending. But if we were to push back and say that there's certain standards on the legislation that he actually helped to write, influence, and push on, that we think should be applied right now to the pool of folks he's picking from, then I think that would make it easier for us, but also be in line with us pushing and the ZBA towards a diverse ZBA, one with multiple skill sets and multiple perspectives. So I do think it's worth us vetting them, but also asking the mayor of the pool, do you have somebody else that is closer to the home rule that he just signed? And especially around the renter perspective, I know that was a big deal. That's part of his kind of at-large picks that he can have. And then also in general, I mean, I think it's also important for us to tell Greater Boston Real Estate Board and also the BSA of the folks that you're going to be proposing going forward, please have an eye towards the home rule petition. Folks that are urban planners or have that background or experience, folks that have an environmental background, those things as well in terms of the pool that they're going to produce. I do think that we can come to a conclusion on this. I do think that we can definitely get some folks through, but I do think that there's as frustrating as this is, it's also frustrating because this is the way the system is set up. This is the last kind of voice that we have in this dynamic when it comes to the ZBA. The executive order is helpful, but it isn't permanent. And until this home rule is passed, we're still kind of doing the best to influence who's on the ZBA through this process. And let's be very clear, this is the most influence we're going to have right now until that home rule is passed.
Great, thank you, Councilor Edwards. And just to make sure, because I didn't totally reconcile, like go through and read the home rule again, is it just the 2 extra positions with those expertise and we had discussed the renter, or are there other pieces that the home rule had in terms of appointments?
So well, in terms of appointments, it's the 2 additional seats, right? Of the urban planner perspective, which would be proposed by Metropolitan Area Planning Council, MAPC, and the environmental, which would eventually be proposed by CLF, Conservation Law Foundation. Of the mayor's at-large kind of picks, we asked that he would, and he agreed to, pick a homeowner, make sure he had that perspective, and pick a renter and make sure that person had that perspective as well. Then there's the look backs of 5 years, there's the conflicts. One thing I do want to say that we could remind folks, they were required to put in their financial disclosures, all sitting board members, but I don't know if we want to make that as part of the process or part of this vetting. Maybe that's asking too much of them to be vetted around. Maybe they shouldn't have to submit all that stuff if they're not on the ZBA, but that is part of their new requirements. They have to give out their financial disclosures. Current members have not yet. I don't know if we want to do that to future members. It may not be fair, but definitely want to put that on there as well. It's about the conflicts of interest and look back. So.
Great. Okay, thank you, Councilor Edwards. Yeah, so my quick reaction to that in terms of what could be an immediate way forward is maybe there's not until the home rule legislation will be passed, maybe there's not different requirements in terms of disclosures. Maybe it's not, MAPC and CLF necessarily picking these, but just ensuring that the seats we have available at least bring this expertise that we've emphasized. And then the mayor's extra seat that he has to nominate, that he hasn't nominated anyone for yet, that has basically been tagged in the legislation for a renter, and we would hope to see it either in these new seats or that. Okay, I see you have your homeowner. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councilor Edwards. Finish.
It's renter and a homeowner because he has the 2 at large. He's got 2 community group kind of thing. So that's what's in the legislation.
Okay, I would need to double check who the current one that sits in those seats, whether he is a renter or a homeowner. I don't know.
I think it's Joe Ruggiero. If it's Joe Ruggiero, he's a homeowner.
He's a homeowner. Okay, so the next one would have to be a renter potentially.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? Can I ask a question through you to Councilor Edwards?
Oh, sure. Okay, just because it's directed back to Lydia, and because I don't want everyone else to get.
Yeah, Lydia, through the chair, what is the significance? Like, what type of expertise does a homeowner and a renter bring? Like, what sort of expertise are we looking for there? Just curious.
On those so they're not statutory seats for expertise, right? So let's be clear, those are always community seats. So they were always supposed to be people reflective of the community. And that's what the mayor does. And so what we asked of the mayor, instead of creating a whole nother seat, which I think you are correct, would have required an expertise explanation. We just simply said, but the seats and the picks you already have, Mayor, could you make sure that one at least is a homeowner and one is a renter?
So do those people have to be able to read plans or anything like that? Or what's, I mean, I don't.
They currently do not have to. They're just supposed to be representatives of the community. Like Joe is he's a East Boston guy, worked really hard from the civic association. That's part of the also requirement. You have to be involved. And all we're saying is when you go to pick that person, and Mayor agreed to this, the homeowner, they come to the neighborhood organizations. They have to do that. They have to demonstrate having worked hard and been part of this vetting process at the local level if there's an expertise. But after that, we just simply said, rather than create a new seat, could you at least pick a homeowner and a renter?
So both of those, the homeowner and the renter, have to have shown a history of going to civic meetings, being involved in process.
Yes, and they currently have to now. That didn't change. That didn't change at all.
Okay,
yeah,
thank
so
you.
Just on that point, the law actually says that I think they have to have been involved for a year. Hold on, let me just double check. An officer, yeah. Okay, so an officer, so they have to have been involved as an officer or a member of the board of directors of the neighborhood association for
Yep.
of a residential neighborhood association for at least 1 year, assuming it's a group with more than 25 members, or they could be not an officer, but part of an elected neighborhood council for more than 1 year. Okay, so Councilor Sabi George.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the conversation and the dialogue so far. Do we have, and I did step away for a quick moment, do we have a timeline outlined already? I know you're looking to bring a report before the council next week, but what is the timeline for this process?
Yeah, I would love to find a way to confirm nominees that match these areas of expertise as quickly as possible. I feel very much the same pressures that several councilors have referenced about stopping residential projects and others who have been in the queue and working. So I'm just checking quickly because I know we're on a limited council schedule over the summer. After next Wednesday's meeting,
we don't meet
have
again
another
until
one.
September 16th.
Yeah, so that would be the next chance to vote through a batch of nominees. And I would hope
So is
would be
that your intention?
Yes.
Is to have that?
Yeah, if there's a chance we could get this resolved by Wednesday, I would love for, a quick conversation. I actually had reached out to some folks earlier today to see, can we talk to the BSA and Greater Boston Real Estate Board? Do they have someone who's a climate change? I'm sure architects very much so have to have climate change backgrounds these days. I think the resume of this particular one didn't seem to reflect that, but maybe there were others on the list already submitted to the mayor that have that, or maybe they have someone else who would be willing to do it. I mean, just keeping in mind, these are volunteer jobs. They are very intensive. And so, it's not like people are jumping all over themselves necessarily.
Right. And that's, I mean, part of my concern around the timeline, both of this effort and sort of the reaching and attaining the larger goals, the sort of the global ideas around this work, but also realizing that there are limits to our time here prior to, we've got Wednesday next week, and then it's a month until our next meeting.
Yeah.
So is it your hope that we'll be wrapped up for sure? I mean, yes, it'd be wonderful if next week could happen, but then the next deadline would be September 16th.
Yeah, I mean, I would do everything in my power to get to that point. I have no interest whatsoever in the council holding this up. I do think we need to not just have a radically different outcome than the one we just voted on with the home rule. So I think, just thinking it through out loud, assuming that we wouldn't get new nominees filed for Wednesday's meeting, like maybe there's a chance that they can be identified and late filed by the administration to be officially, to be ready to the record on Wednesday. And then we have the docket in place, we do a quick hearing, and then we're done by the 16th. If that doesn't happen, we could still call a meeting of the committee even without a docket. And I think everyone would agree that this would be, in line with what we're trying to do, to have a quick conversation about a nominee, even though it's, not, the docket isn't technically before us.
Okay. All right. That's, I think everyone else has covered some of these, some of the questions and concerns out loud already. And for me, the outstanding item is the timeline and how do we get there sort of quickly, considering the restrictions of our meeting schedule. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. And Councilor Mejia.
Yes, sorry for not being able to join you. I was listening, but I want to be safe in terms of driving. But I do have a few questions. I am just curious about whether or not any consideration is being made about political donations that people have made. Board nominees, I don't know if those things get looked at. And to be completely honest and transparent, I'm walking into this conversation, I don't have a lot of experience with this topic. And I don't want to derail any conversation that's going to help move people and their work at home forward. But at the same time, I also want to be mindful and thoughtful about what the process is so that people feel confident that we are doing our due diligence and making sure that those who are being appointed, that there's no financial gains or interest and things of that nature. So aside from just the board appointees for people who are like urban planners and environmentalists and renters and other categories, I'm just curious, are they just regular people? Like, who aren't even part of a neighborhood association. They're like just regular Joe Schmoes out here who aren't having conversations like we're having right now, but are being impacted about these conversations every day. And I'm just curious about, is there like a grading system to determine who gets appointed? Like, is there like a metrics? Like, how do we know who is qualified and who's not? I don't know. And I'm not asking you all to answer those questions today, but I'm curious just in general. And I would also like to support Council Edwards' point about having a renter and a homeowner on the board. And if we can expand that, and specifically having someone who is rent burdened and someone who is a first-time generation homeowner, that would be really great. Just because I think just having people is a good idea, but I think if we could be super intentional about how we're defining those voices, I think can really help us in the long run. And then the last thing that I will say, and that I'm just curious about accountability. And is there a system where every so often we get to hear how these board members, whether or not they are voting in ways that are in line with people? Like, is there a mechanism in place? And I'm the newest one of everybody in the bunch here, so I'm sure you probably know a lot more than me, and I want to be really respectful of the wisdom that is in this room. But those are just some things that instinctually pop up for me.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. I think some of that is captured in the home rule petition, which again, who knows what the timeline could be to implement that. But Councilor Edwards, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the financial disclosures is intended to get some of that as well, of like, what are they tied to, what interests are they tied to, et cetera. And then I think in terms of the criteria and reporting back and accountability, that for sure is in the home rule petition in terms of which variances have been given out of what, in what ways. And what
Right. Yeah, the financial disclosures would be helpful, but the financial disclosures would very likely be happening after they're on the board. So again, I think now that I think about it, I mean, I didn't have to submit a financial disclosure to run for office. Right, I got here, and then subsequently, because I'm in the office and I have certain ethical standards that we all get trained in and all have to sign up for, we submit the financial disclosures. So in terms of but addressing Councilor Mejia's perspective or suggestions, those can absolutely happen. It's just the mayor is the one who's going to be picking the pool. So it would be to him that we suggest that when he's thinking of a renter, think about a renter who's struggling, or a renter possibly on Section 8 or something like that. And to him, we would suggest, if you're talking about a homeowner, talk about, or could you please consider first-time homeowner folks, maybe partner with MAHA and find somebody. So those are suggestions we can just make outright to him that the mayor can do.
Great.
I have one more question. Sorry, Chairwoman
Go ahead.
Wu. I'm just curious whether or not can the council recommend, like, what role do we play? And just say yes or no to the people that have been in front of recommended to us? There's no role for us?
Correct. We do not. So we are we
have
confirm.
hearings
We
to
confirm.
vet.
We confirm ultimately, and yes, vet, as Councilor Baker.
Yeah, and I think I think what I'm trying to flesh out in this process is that our role is, if we all said, or if a majority said, we're not going to vote yes unless they have a climate change background or they're a renter, et cetera. That's kind of the way the system is set up right now. Great. Okay, so are you good, Councilor Mejia? Because I saw Councilor Arroyo has joined as well, so I want to give him a chance to weigh in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are you good, Councilor Mejia? I don't want to take your time if you still got questions.
No, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'm sorry to be joining late. my day's been scheduled out, and so I don't know how much of what my questions were have been asked, and I kind of want to save everybody's time by not re-asking things, but just so I can get a sense of where we're at. Are we waiting on, just for me to understand where we're holding off on, are we waiting on new information that's been requested, or not even new information, but just information in general that's been requested in terms of documents or testimony or anything that we need? Are we waiting on that? Or are we waiting on, and I recognize that Councilor Edwards' proposal, which I support, that changes the ZBA board, is currently a home rule petition. And are we waiting on sort of having the ZBA appointees represent more what the what's intended through that home rule petition that the ZBA look like moving forward, or are we waiting on both things?
So I will answer this. I see Councilor Bach has a blue hand. I know she had a commitment at 5:30, so I think we'll have time to hopefully get her in before then. I would say the latter. In my mind, as committee chair, it was kind of two tracks, right? There's been some issues that have come up with the ZBA. Can we clear the cloud and just restore trust in the agency, either by providing answers, which, I feel like I've gotten the same answers over and over again that, for me, don't feel like they're actually answering the underlying questions, but not letting that get us stuck, because we are still seeing homeowners and others who have gone through the process needing a resolution to this. So given that that has not resolved the issue, can we try to address structural change a different way, instead of looking back, because it doesn't seem like that is getting resolved, looking forward and kind of using this opportunity to create the chance to have that expertise.
So are we waiting on some information though? Is there like any kind of information request that we're waiting on?
I have sent the letters, and I know the Commissioner Irish is on here too. Thank you, Commissioner. The Commissioner has sent a reply letter, which I'd also forwarded to everyone. I'm happy to go through in detail the ways in which I don't think it directly addresses the underlying questions asked, but I've received that set of answers a few different times now. So I don't think that it's worth it in terms of the hold up to residents, et cetera, to keep just hammering that without trying to find a solution and a workable way forward.
Okay. And so, and this is my final question, because I know Kenzie has a time restraint. In terms of the nominees and our role in vetting them and having kind of a firm or not a firm, they were all recommended for these positions or appointed, or not so much appointed, but put forward as potential appointees prior to the passage of the ZBA reforms?
Yep, so the timeline is, and I guess just to clarify the answer to the last question, just like very clearly, I'm not giving up on trying to find the answers, but the response I've gotten from the administration again and again and again is that there is a federal investigation still ongoing, so they're going to defer to getting answers that way. So that aside, the timeline was that the federal investigation began, the news of it broke, and then there were resignations, which opened up vacancies on the board, and then new nominees were submitted. And then there was a period of months before the reports came out of results of investigations about what happened. And since that happened, then COVID and the home rule petition.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And then I'll rewatch this just to pick up whatever I've missed in the interim.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Bach. And if anyone else has comments at this point, just if you could raise your blue hands.
Hi, Madam Chair. I just wanted to note, because I looked it up, that after the what's today's date? Like today's the 13th, right? So between now and the next council meeting, right, which I think is like September 14th or something, it happens that there is only one ZBA meeting, because the ZBA actually also takes a little like break in late August, early September. So whereas like in July, there was a ZBA meeting every week, I do think that, if we could make this request to the mayor and the appointing or nominating, I guess, authorities, and, if it feels to me like there is time between now and the 14th of September for them to nominate some people who reflect better the legislation we passed, and for us to expeditiously take up the nominations. And I personally feel comfortable with the idea that if we were approving new nominees by the middle of September and only one more ZBA meeting had happened between now and then, that doesn't feel to me like undue delay caused by the council. So I just wanted to put that out there from a kind of scheduling perspective.
That's really helpful to have those meeting dates lined up. Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other blue hands. So asking for anyone else, if you want to jump in at this point. No. Okay, nothing else.
How many resignations were there, Michelle?
There was one resignation right after. There was a retirement that had happened right before as well. So there were actually 2 vacancies during that time period.
So in a month, we're looking for new names to be put forward for us to have a hearing and then nominations.
You mean a confirmation vote?
I'm sorry. We're looking for new nominations to be put forward. We're looking to have a hearing for us to vet and then take a vote all in a month.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Everyone has my word as chair that I will do whatever is within my power to stick to that timeline. Okay, so no other comments from counselors. I want to give Commissioner Irish the chance to weigh in or say anything. I know you've been at all of these sessions and have heard my questions over and over again and have been incredibly patient and responsive in terms of getting me a response. So is there anything else you would like to add, Commissioner Irish?
Thank you, Chairman Wu. Actually, there's nothing that I'd like to add. I was just listening in as I'm running errands. Thank you for taking up this matter.
Great. Okay, well, that feels good in terms of having a somewhat defined path forward. So just to summarize, at the next council meeting, so filing in time for tomorrow, I will try to get all of this down on paper so that we have clear written sense of where we're headed. And then the general goal will be to work with the BSA, the Boston Society of Architects, the Greater Boston Real Estate Board, the mayor's office to ensure that there are a set of nominees within the next month that can be approved either from the 2 seats on the table or adding in the one that is still out there to reflect both of these types of expertise as well as the renter provision. Oh, I see a hand from Councilor Mejia.
Yes, Councilor Wu, I'm just curious, and I'm sure this probably was already discussed, but through this, in terms of just racial diversity and small businesses, is there a factor that is in the home rule petition? And I'm sure equity, blah, 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 somewhere there's some standard around that as well. So it's socioeconomic status and all of these things being considered about who's representing in these spaces.
I'll defer to Councilor Edwards, but I actually don't think that was included, was it?
No, not as a requirement within the home rule petition. We had asked initially for a civil rights position, someone who could understand zoning law, a zoning attorney. We had asked for folks who were versed in the equity zoning space, and that we could not agree on those seats with the administration. So the compromise was these 2 seats, environmentalist, urban planner, and having those 2 seats go forward. But those questions that you're asking, Councilor Mejia, at any point in time while we are vetting any potential member, we can ask about their experience, their perspective, how they look at things, period. That's part of the vetting process, but it's not part of the legal requirement.
And they're going to come through us individually, and then we interview them. Is that what the vetting process is that Frank referred to? That's what happens next? Okay.
Yeah.
The council will.
Yeah. So usually the administration would file it at a council meeting, and then once we have the docket, there would be a hearing where the nominees are invited to join. We ask them questions. They send us their resume ahead of time as well, and then we take a vote after that.
Thank you for that.
Okay, anyone else? Last comments and thoughts? Nope. Okay, then we'll adjourn this meeting. I want to thank everyone so much and see you at the council meeting next week.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, thanks. Thank you, Candace.
You're welcome, Counselor. Have a good day.
Okay, see you later. Thank you, Commissioner.